Hi, I'm Tony Buffin with Human Cloud. We're here live at SIA's CollaborationX conference in Dallas, Texas. And right now I'm talking to Jason Posel with GreenLight.ai.
That's right.
Jason and I have known each other for a long time. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast and be talking to you about what's going on in this flexible talent space. It's some place where Human Cloud has been for a while.
Yeah.
And one thing that we talk about a lot is as people think about where they can find the best talent and the different models of talent that they can use, something they don't think about is how do they leverage EORs, employers of record, to make sure that they're managing their compliance and risk the right way.
Yeah.
It kind of happens in the background, but it's critically important. So tell me what role EORs play in enabling this space to work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you firstly for having me. It's awesome to be here. Always love chatting with you. And it's great to actually be on a podcast and do it like in front of people, because I feel like whenever we talk, we explore really cool areas, right? It's not often you get to just geek out on stuff together. So this is really awesome. I'm glad we got to do it here as well at the SIA event. The fact is that every worker has to be paid. And with a payment comes other issues, right? And there's this whole ripple effect. And that really means compliance, right? From how you treat someone from a tax perspective, your contractual obligations, insurance things, someone gets injured, someone steals stuff. There's like a whole, if you're in the US, wage and hour laws are extremely complicated. Are they an independent contractor or an employer? There's so many different things. And for an enterprise buyer in particular, for these large companies, they really care about this risk.
Yeah.
The thing is about freelancers is that full-time employees go through HR. That's right, as you know. And HR, they're known for a lot of things, but part of the reason if people perceive them to have some of a negative, reputation, it's very much because they're often called in to deal with compliance and risk issues, right, for the company. And that's kind of the dirty end. The truth is, when it's a freelancer, who owns that? Who's doing that job? And if you're a small company, you might not care, right? You're a small company, you're one person, you're moving fast, you hire one person, you're going to send them a payment through PayPal. If you're hiring hundreds or thousands of contractors doing different things, and you know there's laws around that, if it's not running through HR, which many of these large programs don't, obviously they run through procurement or contingent workforce programs, like that, someone has to own that risk, and that's going to be a flow down. Yeah. And so EORs are very much, an EOR is a broad term, I think, and somewhat changing and evolving. It used to be called contractor payroll within these programs. What does that mean? You've got a contractor, he needs to be paid. She needs to be paid. And how do you do that and make that efficient? And that's typically very operationally heavy. And so you've seen this involvement where most suppliers of talent into these large programs also take on the responsibility of compliance. Yeah. They may not do it well. Some do it better than others. And frankly, some companies have different risk tolerances, right? And particularly over certain roles. If you're having people come on site, whether you're doing light industrial, it's a factory or a warehouse, or you're like a Silicon Valley tech company, if they go, particularly that, right? Like everyone knows there's laws that have to be followed. And, even walking into an office, you're going to sign this disclaimer, they're going to take a photo of you, right? And all of these things. Well, think about every other aspect that they're concerned about. So staffing industry has really taken on a lot in terms of these responsibilities. Now, that means that some staffing companies act as EORs, essentially. What does that mean? EOR in and of itself means you W-2ing and paying someone on your own payroll. Yeah. And that's what the staffing industry has had to do for the last 20, 30 years. That's how it's kind of why it's called staffing, not just recruitment. Where Human Cloud knows a lot is that this new evolution of sourcing platforms and so on, they're very good at technology and matching. They're amazing at that. There's a tremendous amount of investment there. But they want to be like Date.com for their industry, or like Uber. They don't want to take on why would we take on these responsibilities? I don't have the margins. It's not our focus. We're not going to be good at that. And so you're also seeing that there's this kind of gap. And again, that's where EORs are playing a very prominent role, enabling companies. So for example, with GreenLight, we provide private label. So these talent marketplaces, looks like them, they can sign these same MSAs with large companies that any staffing company can, because they're embedding compliance into their program. They're not just saying, yeah, it's a freelancer, don't worry.
Yeah.
Right, that's not okay, right? That's not table stakes.
Yeah, they have to. Well, and over my experience, talking to enterprises, it's the number one first concern that comes up. Hey, I like this idea of working with flexible talent, freelancers, contractors. There's a lot of value, but the risk, they hear about misclassification lawsuits.
Yeah.
They're like, we don't want that risk. It's too much, so I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And they shut down.
Yeah.
And for marketplaces,
Yeah.
if they're trying to provide that same kind of matching capability, which is so valuable.
Yeah.
They're vetting all this talent, but they don't have the support for compliance behind it. They're not going to win business.
That's
so
exactly correct.
Being able to enable that for them is so valuable.
Right.
What do you do to do that? Like, how are you filling that gap?
So it's funny
Making that
because
possible.
they're very good, obviously. Like, if you're here and you've made it this far, then you're obviously good at the core thing of what you do, right? You might be focused on marketing or IT service or whatever it is. But there's an important part to focus there. And so what we enable them to do is say yes to stuff that they don't otherwise necessarily want to do. So for example, will you make these people W-2s? Can you do worker classification? Will you indemnify us? Can you cover them with insurance? These are all things that can you do people in the Philippines or in Brazil? These are all things that if it's not your main focus, but you have the technology to enable that, how do you say yes?
Yeah.
And that's what we make very easy for them. And there's two parts. There's always a service element. So within, again, self-sourced programs and platforms in particular often lack a service level. And if you're going to work with large programs, there has to be a service level.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, EORs are also bridging that gap. So in other words, it's almost like an MSP type service on a smaller level, because you're still managing risk and contracts and consolidating and having to answer questions to managers or program managers or workers and all of these things, right? And make sure it works ultimately, right? That's what everyone's going to be measured on. So the other part, not all EORs, some EORs are really just focused on like global, make it easy if you do want to hire those people in different countries, not necessarily the US. The US obviously a huge market, so there's other EORs who might be good at like, you need local, like again, warehouse or those type of on-demand
like call
things,
center
right?
or whatever. Yeah.
But then there's also the whole actual freelance world, which as we know is growing, right?
Yeah.
On the SIA keynote, they said there's, an additional 15 million independent contractors since 2022. All of those people need to be paid. They all need a home. And so whoever's going to find the way to get them that job, there's a lot of other responsibilities, and particularly within the US, which is kind of unique. Freelancers still need healthcare. They still need benefits. They want regular pay. They might want flexibility. And so again, EORs really can unlock a lot of that, because they can provide that home, and that even if you're working on different projects for different clients and so on, you still have one paycheck, right, that's coming in. There's one company sending you a paycheck, one place to go and see your contracts, your legal stuff, to get your benefits and have this consistency, however you want to run your life. And we see that a lot in terms of enabling talent marketplaces.
Yeah.
Some of the talent marketplaces who use us for their entire middle, we pay all of their workers a W-2, an independent contractor, someone in France or Brazil, and so on and so forth. But there's so much focus for them, and we're able to take all of this off their plate, right? And that's extremely enabling them. They can scale confidently huge about that, right?
Because that's not what they're good at, right?
100%.
Like you said, they build this great technology. They know how to find the talent that companies are looking for, but compliance is a whole other level of complexity that they don't want to worry about.
Right.
But they have, like you said, they have to be able to say, yes, we can handle that. We can do it without risk. And that's such a load off, right?
There's also other aspects. So, employee benefits and actual HR, right? They really don't want to be HR companies. So like, if you imagine you have 1,000 or 10,000 W-2s spread across the US, and let's just start with one country.
Yeah.
From an HR perspective, how complex, like what are the top
incredibly
5 things you're thinking about that you would immediately have to worry about as head of HR, right? Like just for that, from like benefits to actual employee relations issues, which for sure happen, to people getting injured, to layoffs and terminations. And this is all real stuff. The key there, again, for how companies will ultimately differentiate and really what's coming next is we're seeing a lot of investments in like AI and agents and stuff that's going to happen within HR. Right, I'm sure you're seeing that, right? There's going to be like, we're going to have, instead of someone talking to someone to do the interview where there's still bias, whatever that interview is, it could be an offboarding, it could be an employee relations thing, it could be anything, but bots are going to be doing that stuff as well. That's stuff that we're building, right? And that means you can do 1,000 of these interviews at the same time, in the same way that we enable scale, fast, global, whatever it is, of just onboarding 1,000 freelancers, right? Same as offboarding. All of these same things are going to continue to accelerate. That's where these programs are really gonna evolve, and it's going to again enable other types of sourcing solutions to then come to prominence, because companies are going to know that there's compliance and a fast way to deploy all of their workers, no matter what category they are or where they are in the world.
Well, I love that you brought up AI, because of course, you can't have a conversation without talking about AI. And you're GreenLight.ai.
Correct.
So
we were doing this before it was cool.
before it was fashionable. You started the hype.
2018.
How is AI integrated into what you do, and what is that? How does that manifest for your clients?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's things that are specific to the industry, and I think that there's then just things that are generic that every company is striving to deal with, which is, how do I build a more capital efficient, better business, right? And so whether it's AI or other types of automation, the aim is to make things seamless and work better and quicker and be integrated. And so we own our stack. So in other words, from onboarding to paying and everything in between, we have, whether it's AI, so there's lots of parts of AI, but other types of automation, all of this enables things like getting workers onboarded like in 3 days rather than 35 days, including background checks and equipment. Right? In the pure freelance world, that stuff doesn't matter. Again, in contingent world, that really matters. For us in particular, there's a huge investment into worker classification. So other stuff like onboarding, legacy EOR struggle, but we've seen global EOR has changed what the perception is of how quick you should be able to onboard a worker wherever they are. I think that stuff is table stakes for us. It's like, get a worker onboarded in 7 clicks, right? Like other countries, it might be 9. California, it's actually 10, right? Like, and Massachusetts, I think, might be even 11, because there's additional disclaimers that you actually have to tell workers. But as more people are freelancing as a lifestyle choice, especially in knowledge-based roles, enabling people to get the right qualification in terms of classification. Are they an independent contractor? Should they be a W-2? That's where we've invested a lot of our resources and development. We have, I think, 300 data points that we look at to work out if a worker should be a 1099 or a W-2 in the US alone. So there's lots of different data sources. Things change. Other countries can be more complicated, some less complicated. And so the real value is consolidating that in one central place and actually having a system of record. The AI is just really an enabler to accelerate a lot of these processes, make them more efficient. It's the same concept we've always had about AI, which is, at GreenLight, which is things can be done better, quicker. And yes, you have to provide the service level and layer that I talked about earlier in this world, in a contingent world, enterprise world. But really, people don't want to talk to you unless they really have to. They just want it to work. They want easy, quick solutions or answers, like to get paid, to get onboarded, to fill out a tax form, right? All of those things. And so routing people in the right way, using other tools, embedding through API, other things, again, within our part of the worker life cycle. And so much of this really isn't the focus for so many companies, right? Because they're trying to find the right people. Right. And so enabling that, right, is really the focus.
To me, oftentimes the E in EOR just feels like it stands for enable, because there's so much that, whether it's an enterprise or it's a platform, that they just don't want to think about. But they want it to work. And they want, the most important thing is they want to build trust. And that's what you're able to do with GreenLight.ai. companies, partners,
right.
they can feel like they trust their program and they've mitigated risk.
Right.
And that's so critically important. And that for a platform, that gets them off the first most important, or gets them over the first most important hurdle.
Yeah.
Right? Which is, how do I know that we're not going to get in trouble for working with you to find all this different talent, and we're going to be able to do everything compliantly. Like we want to access talent in all these different locations, but we don't want to get in trouble. Their easy button for that is GreenLight.
That's exactly right. And when you think about it, for the enterprise, they have so many vendors now. They might be talking about vendor consolidation or that. So that's not necessarily related to compliance. But the truth is that means if they have 50 suppliers, they have 50 varieties of compliance.
Yeah.
Right, 50 different flavors, and they might not all be like strictly kosher, right?
Yeah.
For example, and again, that's where we're seeing a big evolution, which is companies want to house their compliance in one place and source in a different place, but for it to work. I mean, that's what we're talking about. This is the whole ecosystem enabler, right?
That's a great point. So the idea that they might, it definitely can make a lot of sense within their ecosystem to have multiple vendors. But just because they have multiple vendors doesn't mean they have to have multiple compliance programs. They can consolidate the compliance of all these different vendors partnering with you.
If you just, absolutely. And if you just think about that every vendor has, for example, an independent contractor agreement for their freelancers. I can tell you we have the best independent contractor agreement you can get, right? It's involved that we use the best lawyers, we have the best clients who also give us great feedback and so on. If you're getting going as a talent marketplace or you're a staffing vendor and like, who's your lawyer? Where's the risk? How do you know that's being managed? What's your insurance really look like, right? Like if stuff happens, can you actually stand behind that? So going back to what you said about being able to sleep at night about your program and not worry about actual risk, it's critical. Right? Yeah, absolutely.
So as we look forward, we've covered kind of how organizations, marketplaces handle all this now. But as you look forward, what do you get excited about in terms of things that are coming up next?
Yeah. I think in particular, this housing freelancers, right? And whether they need to be a W-2, a 1099, wherever they are in the world, just making it easy for them and developing further tools. One of the things that we briefly touched upon was like employee benefits, right? Like embedding that further into our programs, which we already have. If you're a W-2 through our program in the US, you get access to like gold, PPO, and all of this stuff, but also doing that for the actual 1099s. They still need that stuff. Now, there's different things that clients think about who should pay for those things and who's responsible. Ultimately, we, again, just want to enable that. That means a lot of things. It enables freelancers to also confidently want to work for these companies and take these jobs, right?
Again, talking about enablement, from a talent, we talked about enterprises, their first concern is risk, and I don't want to get in trouble, and classification, and getting them over that hurdle. People that want to work independently, at least in the US, their first hesitation is, well, what am I going to do about health insurance? What am I going to do about my benefits? And it holds them back from embracing 100%. This independent, flexible career that they want to create for themselves. They don't often realize that it can be enabled by partnering with someone like GreenLight.
That's right. Both from directly with the enterprise, as well as if you're a staffing organization or talent marketplace. For example, we have a great client who does in a talent marketplace for marketing folks. Their clients are like a great list of Fortune 500 companies. Their website talks about freelancers. That's all it talks about. But it also talks about being a home and giving them benefits. Because their candidate, their candidate that they want to profile and attract is a marketing person who probably needs full-time work and benefits. So they might be selling them the dream of work for the best tech companies or whatever it is, which they are. But they're W-2ing them, even though they're telling them they're freelancers. That's amazing, because now they retain these people, as long as they can get them a job and they're actually good at talent matching, right? Like,
of course, that's
key,
what they
right?
really
Candidate
do.
acquisition, client acquisition matching. That's a success for any of them. So again, and what does that mean in terms of how do they operate like that? That's a problem for them? No, because for GreenLight, we manage all of that. It's very easy. And so they can really, again, focus on, for them, that's their particular strategy around candidate acquisition, and then, conveying that message to their client around who their workforce and their culture is. Not every industry or talent marketplace or staffing organization needs that. Some are and fundamentally should be freelance 1099 or whatever the equivalent globally is shops, because that's the nature of the work. And we have clients like that as well. There, our role in enabler, it's going back to like the classification and compliance part, which is make sure that the client confidently knows that no matter the source of talent or who that worker is, that they're paid legally, compliantly, and it's not going to come back to them. And they want indemnification. If everyone should be an independent contractor, that still means there needs to be a bouncer on the door checking them. You can't just say, oh, you look like a freelancer, fine, we'll let you into the Microsoft or OpenAI.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not, like, they need to still provide the documentation check. There needs to be a record of it. Just like we said, if you're physically going on site, there's going to be a record. And so being able to accurately, rapidly, compliantly classify workers is huge for companies, right? As they more and more want to adopt a freelancer when they should be, because there's so much friction around freelancers. That just makes me nervous. That's okay. But if they should be, let's classify, let's indemnify, let's work with legal to make sure everyone's happy and signed off with the model, and then make sure on every individual basis that they're meeting the criteria. That's what our technology and our AI is enabling, right? Wherever they are globally, there's like 50 regimes in the US that we look at, like our data points. It's different globally, but that's so critical, right? You want to onboard 1,000 marketing people, data aggregators for a project this week, and you just need to make sure that they all meet their criteria wherever they are in the world. Detailed in the US, right? More detailed in California, the ABC test. Might be easy in the Philippines. All of this stuff like can be done rapidly now through technology. That would have been impossible like a couple of years ago.
Well, I mean, in a huge part of the value proposition for any marketplace is finding that talent fast.
Yes.
But if you find the talent and then it takes forever to get the classification onboarding done, you've destroyed your value proposition.
Exactly.
So by enabling that with speed, you allow them to keep delivering on that promise to their clients.
The fact is, it's not just for talent marketplaces, right? It's any kind of talent organization, including direct sourcing tools like VMSs are looking at this, all right? Anyone who's, even ATSs, anyone who's doing the talent matching, they need to integrate, right? And I think that's kind of probably the point we should end on, which is it's still an ecosystem play, right? We're very much in our swim lane, provide the best infrastructure for onboarding and paying workers. Saying compliant, we're a compliance company that's a tech, got this big tech layer, right? But saying compliance almost seems silly because obviously it's got to be compliant, but that's not necessarily intuitive to everybody, right? There's still a lot of education to be done.
Well, so anybody that wants to learn more about this, if they want to understand how they can do this, how they can be compliant, how they can hit this easy button so they can focus on what they do best. Where do they go? How do they learn more? And how do they get in touch with you if they want to talk about it further?
So my email is easy. It's jasonposel@greenlight.ai.
That's easy.
And we've got, obviously, greenlight.ai is the website. We're collaborating, obviously, a lot on different things. So they should come to you, right, as a resource as well around these things. But we're happy to talk to anyone. We're very much about educating the industry around compliance issues. We actually just started a program to sponsor SIA. They do their own risk training, which we're the first ever sponsor on, and we're working with them on that curriculum as well. So get in touch. We want to help people grow.
That's great. I'm so glad to have you on this podcast and for us to have this conversation in front of everybody else, because we have a lot of these conversations just on our own. So I'm glad we had a chance to share it with everybody. Go check out GreenLight.ai. Thanks again for joining us, Jason.
Love it. Thanks, Tony.